What's going on, guys? This is Jake Boley with BarBend.com. Today we have a very special guest in office. We have a Mr. Jordan Shallow, aka The Muscle Doc on Instagram. Today we are going to be addressing common issues with the IT band. The iliotibial band, also known as the IT band, is a multi-purpose tendon that runs down the lateral portion of the leg. It originates from the top of the pelvis, also known as the ilium, and it inserts into the shin bone, also known as the tibia, hence the name IT band. Now, this tendon connects the tensor fascia latae with the glute maximus. The tensor fascia latae plays a major role in hip flexion, and the glute max plays a major role in hip external rotation and hip extension. Now, what does the IT band do? For sports and performance and lifting purposes, the IT band plays a major role in stabilizing the knee and the hips. So, when doing squats and other various movements, whether they be unilateral or bilateral, the IT band plays a major role in stabilizing the hip and the knee.
All right, guys, so first stretch we're gonna do actually has nothing to do with the actual iliotibial band itself. What we're gonna do is we're gonna actually address the muscles around the ITs. The iliotibial band is just sort of connective tissue that does the bidding of three major muscles of the hip, responsible for 5 of 6 movements of the hip. Basically everything but pure adduction is relayed through the iliotibial band through the glute max, the glute med, and the TFL. So starting with a very standard pigeon pose, what we're gonna have Jake do is all we're gonna really focus on based off progression is gonna be where his foot is. So if you find the foot out is too much torque at the knee, we're just gonna bring this in and we're gonna center his sternum to the midline of his femur. We're gonna square up our hands on either side. We're gonna tuck our rib cage down, keeping the lumbar spine neutral, and we're just gonna slowly hinge as we generate more relative external rotation at that hip. So he's gonna hold that position where he starts to feel a stretch in the glute, both glute max and glute med. Now from here, you get a few options. You can hold for time. I prefer holding for breath cycles. So going through 3 or 4 full inhalations and exhalations in and out through the nose helps get us a little bit more parasympathetic, helps drive that mobility a little bit more effectively. So we're gonna hold this pigeon pose for, again, either time or reps with just a focus on creating more external rotation or creating more of a stretch to the glute max and the glute med, both of which are gonna pull on that IT band when the hip gets either weak or unstable. All right, guys, so second in the progression, we're gonna address the third muscle that acts on the iliotibial band. So far we've done glutes, max and med. So now we're gonna address the TFL. Now the TFL is kind of an interesting muscle, hard to get at. We're gonna sort of adopt this 90-90 position where this back hip is extended and internally rotated, sort of brings the TFL to the forefront. What I want you to think of, follow the seam of your shorts or your pants kind of up into the line of the pocket. We're gonna take this kettlebell handle and we're gonna sort of jam it right in and we're gonna almost bring our torso over. So we're gonna apply that force right into the hip, kind of come in perpendicular on like a 45-degree of the handle. And we're gonna hold this position of internal rotation and extension of the hip while putting direct pressure onto the TFL itself. TFL is a primary stabilizer of the hip. It also secondary flexion internally rotates as well. A muscle often implicated with hip instability, which is going to be something we look to address as we really put a full package, or we put together a full package for addressing the iliotibial band. So kettlebell handle into the TFL helps sort of complete addressing the musculature around which acts on the iliotibial band, and then we'll move downstream and then work on the stability from there. All right, guys, so now we're actually going to address the iliotibial band itself. Now, a common misconception is that we can actually stretch or add length to the iliotibial band. It's kind of like connective tissue, so the pursuit isn't really to lengthen or stretch, but maybe to affect some muscles that lie a little bit deeper to the iliotibial band, like the vastus lateralis, or one of our major quad muscles. So side lying on the roller, we're going to anchor that Achilles tendon right on the quad, and then what we're going to do is go through active range of motion of flexion extension of the knee, flexing that hamstring, trying to bring that muscle to full shortening by bringing that heel right to the butt. And then we're going to fully flex the quad with a big emphasis on that VMO, that terminal knee extender. So working that knee through full range under that direct pressure of the foam roller on the IT and the structures that lie beneath. Now, going through a few passes at each point. So we're going to move up a bit rather than just rolling back and forth. We're going to sort of pick 2 or 3 points between sort of the side of the hip and the side of the knee, stopping at each point and going through a few passes of flexion and extension. All right, guys, so now we're going to bring it full circle by introducing some hip stability drills to actually activate and stabilize the muscles at the hip that could be causing the issues at the iliotibial band. So what we're going to do is we're going to extend that opposite leg hip. I want you to be really focused on kind of activating that hamstring, activating that glute. Notice how his heel is really high, so don't lose sight of this. We're going to keep that hip in extension. Now he's going to drop this side of his pelvis down towards the ground and it really gets a stretch in this hip. So notice how this back toe starts to point towards the floor. He's driving kind of all that force, getting a similar stretch to that first pigeon pose, but with his foot on the ground. A lot of iliotibial band issues are gonna manifest themselves with their foot on the ground, running, squatting, deadlifting, what have you. So now in this lengthened position of the muscles of his hip, he's gonna close them down. He's gonna bring this pelvis, and he's gonna have that start to face towards you guys. Notice he's keeping a slight bend in the knee, active through the foot, trying to keep 3 points of contact. You might even feel a stretch in his adductors as he opens that pelvis up, and as he drops back down again, he's gonna keep this hip high. He's gonna try and find further length in those muscles of the hip. Really start to paint the edges. Think what's going on at that hip socket. He's starting to paint the edges. In sports and in lifting, where we start to be very sagittal front to back, he's really trying to find that end range through that abduction external rotation plane, which we find ourselves in under load a lot, and can be the underlying cause of why our iliotibial band reacts the way it does and gives us pain at the knee, hip, and at the lower back. So a few reps here, and then over time, what we want to see is we want to limit the external stability, right? Right now we're using a bench. Now I'd like to progress him to maybe a dowel in one hand, and then being able to do this body weight without sort of the training wheels of the bench. So good starting point for most of you guys, unless you've trained this in the past. This is going to be a good starting point to help get used to these relative joint positions and really start to hone in on that instability that could be causing you issues at the iliotibial band.
A big thank you to Jordan Shallow for coming into the BarBend office. Hopefully you can take away some of the tips he discussed in this video and apply them to your training. As always, we're gonna link Jordan Shallow's information down below, so give him a follow, check him out, and like and subscribe to the channel.